Very good morning to all. Today we have a eminent speaker, Mr. Arpit Deomurari, and today's webinar topic is Artificial Intelligence for Conservation, Ecology and Environment. Before we start a session, I am give you brief introduction about our eminent speaker. Arpit Murari, currently working with WWF India as a lead GIS conservation technology. He has 15-year plus experience with various organizations and projects like FAS, WTI, USAID, World Bank, and numerous research and institutions around the world. He has handled complex projects and analytics using GIS, remote sensing, biodiversity, informatics, and big data to improve decision making in the development and conservation. He is the recipient of the Ecologist Award for Wildlife Conservation and an avid bird photographer with more than 1,000 images appearing in international publications. So it is very glad Arpit sir is with us. So now I request to Arpit sir to start session. Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks, Kunal, for such a lovely introduction. All said and done, I'm basically a computer engineer, and I try to work on solving conservation problems, issues, development fields, using data science, technology, and various different mode of big technologies. Since last couple of years, I'm more focused on wildlife conservation. Earlier, I used to work in development arena, mostly with NGOs. And today, I am present some outline, some theories, some basics, and some of the utilization of AI, machine learning, deep learning, those kind of a concept in wildlife conservation and management. I'm working with as a lead scientist for WWF India, and some of the live examples I'll try to demonstrate. And for any question answer, you can drop on the YouTube stream, and I can later on try to accommodate the answers if possible in time. So we all know about or heard about AI. What it means? First, we start with the definitions, and then we'll go for the theory and the practice. So, other than this, let's talk what's intelligence. Humans have the skill called intelligence, where they apply their knowledge, their skills, gained knowledge into any of the tasks which seems doable, and they improve the performance. The whole intelligence is based on how you can improve the performance of given task with a given person. So when we say about artificial intelligence, as name suggests, it's more about how machines work with that, or how you develop those kind of machines. So here, machine is normally taken as not a hardware, but the software brain behind that. So it's more of a science of making intelligent computer programs. And it's a very wide area. You have applications ranging from text mining, data mining, predictions, machine learning, computer vision, object detections. Then you have object masking, counting. There's a whole lot of plethora of tools and technologies started. In last 5 years or so, or to be precise, around 7 years, this old technology used to reside in the proprietary firms, be it Google, Microsoft, HCL, and they used to use these tools daily. And I'll give you a couple of examples where your cell phone is using this technology, your Google, your ad targeting, or whatever you search, the ad is shown in the same relevant topic. Those are all backed up by the AI, machine learning. So today we're going to talk two aspects of AI. One is the machine learning, and another is a deep learning. So these are all algorithms. These are all algorithms which are used to create systems and softwares which enables us to develop more efficient performance. So machine learning basically is kind of a technical tools, but more have an origin on the statistic, maths, data science, probability. The whole machine learning, AI, deep learning is based on probability theories. And it enables the software to develop its task, and it learns from its own task. So if you look at the normal programming scenario, you have a data and you have a set of instructions. So like A plus B, A and B is your data, plus is your instruction or a program, and it gives you A plus B as an output. That's the way traditional programming used to happen. But in machine learning, it's more about you have a set of data, you have a set of outputs, and you combine that into a program. So here the variable gets shuffled up, but this is what we call learning. You have a set of process which improves your performance from your experience, from what you have gained or what you have observed in your knowledge. I'll give you an example. I mean, say for an example, as a kid, a small toddler would not have a hot milk. I mean, he might probably first time drink the hot milk, but next time he'll be careful. So this is the way you learn from your experience, and it's a really amazing science and amazing data science, I would say, and it helps in our from daily problems to conservation, to climate change, to any of the critical. In fact, right now the COVID scenario, half of the population is working on a front line for vaccine developments and drug discoveries. The very similar work is done through the machine learning and AI to come up with one single solution for the pandemic. So why we use this? What's the need of this? If you look at human expertise does not exist in some of the cases. There are 4 or 5 cases. We as a human can't explain certain skills or certain expertise. And if I ask you how to recognize different voice, probably you can't. I mean, you're like, yeah, I know. I mean, but his tone is slightly pitch, his voice is slightly louder, this, that, but still you can't recognize or describe the expertise, because until unless you can't describe, you can't implement. Another is it has to be customized. I mean, humans can work similarly on one problem or 2 problems, but if I ask, I want a solution which is tailor-made for every person on Earth, probably humans can't do that. And second, it handles a huge amount of data. I'm here talking about not GBs, but terabytes. I'll come to some of the example later on. And this amount of data sets are really enormous in size, and for a human to do it with a pen and paper is nearly impossible. And with a normal computer software is also, it's sometimes very critical and very crucial that they can't handle this software or a bandwidth. So what kind of a learning? So let's go back to the basic of theory of all this so-called techie or geeky science. So there are basically 4 types of learning. One is what we call supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, and reinforcement. So what it means by supervised? Supervised, you have a set of training data and you have a desired output. Means you have something which it look like. So say for an example, you have a 100 email in your mailbox. Out of that 100, you have 20 as a spam. So you have a training data and you know what spam look like. So you have a desired output. So those kind of data is available. Then you can use supervised learning. Unsupervised means you have only your emails, you have only your data. You don't know what is a spam. Then it comes as a unsupervised. Second is semi-supervised. Third, where you have a training data, means you have an email and you have a doubt like 3-4 emails are probably spam. Rest are not. I mean, you are not sure about that. And last one, which is widely used and a kind of a backbone to machine learning or a deep learning, is called reinforcement learning, where you have a training data. In simple word, it's a training data desired output in a loop. So you get new data, the machine learns. So you have an action and you have a penalty and reward system inbuilt. So it's something like you got a good marks, your parents might get you a new phone or a new bike or a car or something. And if you don't get good marks, you might get punished. As I said, any of the example. So let's go scheme through each of these 4 in various small examples. So supervised learning, typical one is what we call regression, where you know X and you have to know or predict Y. So you have a set of data, you plot it, and then you try to figure out what would be the value of Y if given X. So it might come up as a linear or quadratic or a product or that kind of a function, which is like something like what we used to study in algebra: a square, b square, find x, y, get the value. So this is the basic supervised learning you can carry out. Second is, within supervised, you have a problem called classification, where the y is categorical. Here, in this example, y is a real value, means it's a discrete number. Whereas here, it's a category, means it's here in the example, you need to know, do you have a cancer or you don't have a cancer. So you have a set of data, which is tumor size, which is categorized into, malignant and benign. Up to a certain point, say in the middle, you can predict it's a benign based on the tumor size. So normally it's a 2 variable, but in real life scenario, we work with I normally work with 100. Terms of a supervised learning through classification problems. So here, what happens? You have an age and you have a tumor size, but each dimension has the multiple attributes. So say for an example, as I mentioned, I deal normally with 100 variables and how it works. So let's go back to our email example. You have a set of emails, 5-10 are spam, that becomes your training set or your labels, and you match with that. But sometimes what happens, there will be particular email ID from which the spam is generating or originating. That becomes your one of the dimensions. The text within the email, the spam email, becomes one of your variable or attribute to attach to the classification issue or a data set. Unsupervised. This is where we are diving with our close eye. We don't know what the output look like, or we have a set of large chunk of data and we try to figure out what's what's the classification behind it? So one of our approach we use is called clustering, where based on a geographic distance, all these points on XY dimension or 2 dimensions have been categorized into 3 different bins. Now the same applies here as with the unsupervised learning. It can be multivariated, means it can have a multiple attributes attached to each of the points. So it won't be 2-dimensional or a 3-dimensional, it can be n-dimensional structure. Another one of the application which you can relate in real life is you have to identify individual based on a genetic similarity. Means we use this in our day-to-day life pretty much. I mean, we means I basically, where I have to find which tiger skate it is. What we do is we analyze the tiger droppings or a skate, get the DNA extracted, and then once the DNA comes, DNA, as you know, is a ATCGP a protein chain. It's a different code, and then we have to check based on our bank which individual tiger is related to that, or it's the one. It can go into a deeper one. We do a hierarchy or a progeny classification also from that. But basically, we deal with really large chunk of metagenomic data and try to identify the individual. Now, this one is you have everyone use. People with my age group have used Mario, which is the first probably example of game which have used reinforcement learning. Now, what's the reinforcement? Means you have an action based on a data available or a task, and it goes back to learning cycle. So the way more you explore, you got more powers, you got penalties, you got rewards. That is the basic of reinforcement learning. And this become widely used, or this whole reinforcement learning started with gaming industry. But in real life scenario, we do agent-based modeling, which in layman's term, you have a one problem and it is attached with plenty of players. Example, let me give you a live example. We're dealing with poaching issue. People kill animals for their livelihood or for their funds, for easy peasy money, and how you can deal with that. So that becomes an agent-based model, what we call. So if you have action, a poaching, you have actor, means a poacher, you have the value, means animal, you have the social dynamics, means protection, the law and the forest department, the villagers and the community. So it becomes a really complex system, and each has a reward and penalty system. Means if you do something good for a poacher, if he kills one tiger, that becomes a reward. But for a forest department, if one tiger gets killed, that becomes a penalty. So here it becomes a very complex interaction between different systems. So this is called reinforcement learning or agent-based learning. I'll give you a couple of examples of that later on. So how you design a learning system? You got a basic theory, 4 type of classifications or learning systems. Each can be mixed up. It can be jazzed up. But overall, learning system comprise of what you want to learn or training experience. Choose exactly what it's to be learned. Means you want to learn about segregating your sperm cells. You want to learn about how many, what's the probability of cancer. You want to learn about how the tigers can be identified. And you try to, mathematically model the function, use a proper algorithm, and then divide that into training as well as testing. Because first thing we have to understand, this is all computer systems. And we are trying to make the dumb computer, the binary 0-1 computer, into intelligent. So we have to give them learning through training and check through testing. So all sort of a data has been divided into training and testing. So this is the last slide of boring theory. So just hang on there. So in nutshell, since last 7 years, there are thousands of algorithms. Every day, new algorithm, new architecture is coming up, be it TensorFlow, AmexNet, Google, Microsoft. Everyone has at least opened up their repository, because this is more of a community science. And more of this is focused on how you represent your results, how you optimize, because this requires a large computing framework and times, and how you evaluate, how you validate the models. So in cyclic term, you understand your problem, you gather the data which you seem feasible, you make models or learn, you try to interpret that, you consolidate, you package them properly and deploy into application. Then again, go back to the domain. What's the problem? What's the thing? So it's a continuous learning cycle. What's the benefit? I see for a human basically two benefits. One, we are good. Humans are good because of their inherent capability of dealing with intelligence to learn and write algorithms. Algorithm is basically a set of process, set of workflow, which do certain kind of a thing. So we are pretty good at it, but the computers can't do that, right? There are work going on, automated programming, automated this, but it's still, it's the system is yet not that advanced stage, I would say. But on the other hand, we can do large scale implementation of those algorithms. We can't automate that. That is the best thing left to machines to do that. In last 10 years or so, you might have heard a word called big data. It always used to excite me 10 years back. Now I use big data, so kind of chilled out with it. Big data has a lot of potential, but it has a limitation with the humans in terms of size, velocity, and the speed which it generates. Like whatever we are recording here or presenting, it's a kind of a big data in the whole internet ecosystem. And it's a huge flood of available data. You got a tweet data, you got every 8-day satellite imagery, 30-meter, 10-meter resolution. You got your Instagram post, you got Facebook post. I mean, thousands of blogs, news reports, WhatsApp. All these are like flooding. And how you want to learn from this? Actually, we are in a era of information overload, I would prefer to say. Second, there is a huge increase in computation capacity. My first computer way back in 2000 was 500 megahertz with 32 MB of RAM and 500 GB, 5 GB of hard drive. And now my phone has 8 GB of RAM, octa-core processor, and blah blah blah. So it's a computing which is really driven down the whole change in the atmosphere. On top of it, you got the data, you got the computing facility, and the merger is the algorithm available. As I mentioned earlier, there are thousands and hundreds of algorithms available based on the problem you are trying to do. And the catalyst to this effect is support by industry. I mean, Google, the TensorFlow technology is developed I mean, I really doubt there would be a one thematic area where we don't use this. I mean, as Kunal mentioned, I'm a birder, and now the birding is supposed to be go out in the field and jungle and try to see birds or photograph them. I use AI to find where I can find which bird. If I'm not able to identify, I use AI to identify which is that bird. My day-to-day job as a lead scientist is identifying thousands of tigers, leopards, predict their movements, make sure the villagers don't get in touch with them and get into a conflict scenario. Elephant don't raid the crop. So it surrounded us. Your cell phone, if you know, it has now new cell phones as those face unlocking systems. That is based on the machine learning because it can identify only your face. You have trained them. And this model becomes so efficient. So performance has been so much increased that as an input to train your face to understand computer or a cell phone to detect, you require 4 images, 5 images. How do they then? So first, I'll go skim through some general application. One is a banking, telecom, retail, where you are normally dealing with customers or people to people. So you can find your customer, who's not satisfied with your service, good, bad customers. You can get more effective advertising, credit risk, fraud, churn rate. Now, this is more on the financial, machine learning, and modeling side. As I mentioned earlier, medicine. I mean, in last 5 to 10 years, all the drug who came out to a trial period or everything has to go with a robust screening through machine learning and this, because it enables you to predict the behavior of individual chemicals or molecules with the protein structures, which for humans it was earlier very dangerous task. Means you have to give that administer to a human or a mice, and then you look out at the parameters and different. But now you have a mice as the whole genomic system ready-made available. In security, like as I mentioned, face recognition, your Aadhaar card, your iris verification, fingerprints, DNA fingerprinting, all these things. Computer and internet, I mean, huge. The whole technology has been developed on that. So probably you might have noticed in last couple of years, each of the website you go, you will have a small chat box like support, different names and all those kind of things. How you can do that? And initially it all started with the call centers where there would be some person sitting somewhere answering your queries over the chat box. But now it's all automated based on you type whatever language. If you have a perfect English, non-perfect English, mix up, you are in a regional language, then the new models are working on regional language, and they can directly interact with your queries. Spam filtering, everyone knows Google can quickly, put junk mails and spam. Text translation, recommendation. I mean, now we are all in a lockdown situation. If you open your Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hotstar, it just gives you, like, okay, what do you want to watch? How they know? And if you look, at least 5 out of 7 recommendation would be good. Like, oh yeah, that's the movie interesting. That sounds good. Why? Because it learned from whatever movie you have already seen. So here comes the exciting part. How we use this. So first application I'm trying to do is law and enforcement in wildlife conservation, where, as I mentioned earlier, how we save the animals from poaching, management effective means, how the forest department is working with protected areas and try to deliver their outcomes. The earliest system, if you know or anybody has gone through or any idea about the forest department across the world, they go on the trails. They go randomly on the national park, 4 or 5 beat guards or 1 ranger, different officials, and they walk on a trail. So they patrol the whole national park. But as with all humans, we become sometimes lazy. We prefer easy paths. We don't climb the hills, and all those kind of things happens. So one of my friend actually developed this. He works with MIT. He's a chair of computer science, Millen, and we developed this together. So what it does, it takes the whole topography of your protected area, be it wildlife sanctuary or a national park. It gets the auxiliary data, like what's the elevation, what's the land use, different posts, where are the check posts, which are the traditional trails, where the poaching incidents has been recorded, and you put all this data into one system, it generates a different routes, different trails automatically, and it redirects the application or the patrolling party to those part of a national park to identify where maximum poaching or incidents are happening. This initially was a typical GIS system. If any one of you are into GIS, this is typical route planning or resource planning mixture kind of a application, but we had a ML layer on top of this data set. We started predicting based on time, based on the trail length, based on the people. So all this software runs on a one central server, but we develop a one small application on the mobile phones. So a ranger or a park official carry that mobile phone. It has a GPS, it has different data, I mean maps, and it records the data also on the way, and it keeps learning. It keeps learning, and we have seen like nearly from 75 to 80% decrease in poaching and that kind of incident with a less manpower. You don't have to do that much trail, you know, which are safe area, which are not safe area, the community perceptions, all are feed into this. So it helps a lot in forecasting poaching of animal, route planning, where to deploy your, you know, frontline staff in terms of protection of animals or encroachment. And there are two applications. One is a smart spatial monitoring and reporting tool. And in India, WII has developed kind of a similar one, which is called AmStripe, which is particularly used for tiger reserves in India. Second one, which is like, I deal with this every day. I mean, in a year, WWF as an organization, we do camera trapping. And so camera trapping is very simple exercise. Every 4 kilometers we deploy, we put 2 camera facing each other in a trail. An animal pass through, it captures the image. And from that image, we identify which particular tiger it is, how many tiger, leopard, hyena, rhino, all different animals, birds. But it has to be done individually. So in a one session on one survey, it is normally for 3 months with 14 days on-off interval, and you got a millions of images. And traditionally, what we do, we go get the SD card out, put it into computer, and keep clicking. Okay, tiger 1, no, leopard 1, elephant 1, 2 tiger, 3 tiger, that way. And initially, it sounds good. After 1 hour, you got crazy. And how you can solve this? I mean, this data, if you know, like people, I mean, in news, there are 3,000 tigers or 2,798 tigers, and how many leopards. And those figures actually comes from this exercise, which are fed into a different model called occupancy, capture, recapture. These are the totally different conservation biology topics. And then it gives you a population estimation that Ranthambore has 326 tigers, plus minus 7. Now that number to reach that kind of assessment, you need to have the images of animals and capture. So I got an object detection with AI. It's the third. If you remember my first slide, it has AI, machine learning, and deep learning. This is a supervised kind of a classification, means I have some images where it has shown there is elephant, there is a tiger, there is a hyena. We learn on that and predict. The computer, the system predicts. So in this example, there is a bedroom scene with the kids and a parent. It can predict everything. I mean, like person, laptop, bed, you have a cup, you have an apple, all different things can be predicted through computers. And it's a huge task. So right now I'm using 70 species, 70 different categories, so labels, and somewhere around 20 lakh images or samples of that. and the whole total database is somewhere around 8 terabytes. I feed that into a system. The computer runs for at least 3 to 4 weeks. If nothing wrong goes in between, it gives me an output, which is more or less right. So another example, this one was a live meeting I hosted recently, and I just, for a demonstration, I just shown it. It identifies pen, chair, table, humans, images, everything into a one single, and you don't have to do a human intervention. And this way I can count attendance, how many people have actually joined my presentation. We use this with multiple things. So one of the example on the bottom left is you can count seats. I count elephants through infrared or night vision camera, and I'm developing a system where on the drone or UAVs, this night vision camera would be fixed, and if the elephant comes nearby the villages, it alerts the villagers as a human-wildlife conflict. And it can do remarkably good compared to human eye. I mean, I don't know, you might be able to see this image, but there is an axis, I mean, chital, deer. And for human eye, it might take some seconds to, oh, okay, there is a deer. But computer can easily identify this green bounding box is the identification from the computer. If it's a night camera, if it's a night image, it captures that also. If it's partial, so here is a tusker, a young male elephant in a night, partially vision, but it can capture these images also. Part of an animal, like sometimes what we do is we got into, we don't get the full animal, you know, like camera is this small, their field of view is limited, and you got only tail, or you got only trunk of an elephant or a bum of a rhino, but it can detect based on the inference they learned. It can count. So here it can easily count, like there are 4 cows in a frame. So you don't have to do much of, you know, painstaking manual task, and it really improves my efficiency to from individual camera trip data, capturing those into the model quickly. Because if you look at realistic time before this technology, we do like 3 months of survey. The sorting out image with 4 or 5, if it's a small survey, then 4 or 5 interns, it will take another 6 to 8 months. Then you analyze the data and you write. So by that time the report comes out, which actually helps the PM managers or a forest department, it's gonna go directly to the old data kind of a scene. Now this same model, as I mentioned, we have developed for poachers and the night vision to, you know, actually use the in a different scenario. So we use to detect poachers in a night vision camera or infrared camera, or elephant moving into our landscapes and damaging crops, like particularly in Northeast India and Western Ghats, South India. We have a big issue with the elephant. They raid the crops and fields and breweries. I mean, elephant love booze, trust me on that. And it can work day or night. It requires minimal human power or no manpower. It's all computerized. It alerts the villagers, it alerts the forest department and stuff. Now, one example on how we use this in GIS and remote sensing. Way back, I have been given tasks to evaluate our work in whole of the Himalayan region. So this is kind of one of my territory. This is the whole Himalayan range from Western Himalaya to Northeastern Himalaya. And this is where I work as one of a part. I had given tasks to do land use cover analysis, means change in the vegetation and the different classes for 3 years. 2000, 2010, and 2017 at a 30-meter resolution. And if anyone is aware about remote sensing and land use classification, it's a hamburger's task. You're talking about, so one single year imagery at 30 meter in this size was somewhere around 124 GB plus different layers. So I use supervised machine learning algorithm because I knew supervised algorithm, because if you go back to the theory bits, supervised, because I knew there are some land cover classes I know, and doing a field survey of whole of Himalaya is out of the question. I did a new technique called Ensemble, where I have made support vector and random forest algorithm into one. And this is totally done on open source, and everything run on the Amazon cloud, because I didn't have my 120 or 64 GB machine also can't cater this data set. So this is how I input or build the system. I knew my problem. I need a land use land cover classification for 3 eco. I have existing data in terms of, say, forest cover, climate, elevation, satellite imagery, some learned label or some non-classification label from 2008 link cover. I put that into a machine learning. Basically, I run 5-6 model, but finally I choose SVM and RF based on the test data, which does the best. And then I carried out the formal analysis of what the change has happened. So if you look at this, becomes like more technical, but what I mentioned here, that this technique enabled me to use not only optical remote sensing data, but radar data also, so which can actually penetrate through cloud. And this is a classification, this is sampling, where I took all the labeling classes and I divided them into 4 different sets, and each have training and validation and one independent evolution stage. I had used artificial neural network, random forest, SVM, and more of an ensemble, means I choose the best model out of 3 into each year and merge them into one thing. Another application, voice recognition or a soundscape, what do you call it? It's a many totally new field. Probably in this lockdown, you might have heard over a Facebook, different organizations and research institute trying to understand what's happening with our soundscape in a, oh, right now there is a whistle of my cooker going on. So yeah, this kind of a noise or sounds are happening across our environment, and how you can learn from that. And if you listen any of ambient sound, there will be a lot of noise and this. So one of the algorithm which I'm trying to work out here is detect elephant through voice. Normally you might have heard the trumpet sound of elephants, but actually elephant communicate in an infrasonic frequency which we can't hear. So now the similar infrasonic, and they can go for miles. I mean, at least easily 40-50 kilometers they can communicate. Within the infrasonic frequency range, you have a different noise also. So noise here means high power tension line, they generate the infrasonic sound. Ignition system of vehicles means spark plugs in the petrol driven vehicles. They also generate the infrasonic sound. And so, I mean, when you record that, you will hear all different kind of systems. But how I can, how I'm trying to do deep learning to remove a noise. So if you look at the graph here, the right side one are the noise, which is kind of a constant. It was actually at a high power tension line. And this abnormal graph is actually where the elephants are communicating, or elephants are talking to each other in a group. Once I'll remove this noise, I'll get the clear pattern of elephant noise, and that will help in further amplifying the users. Once I build the model, put it into say Raspberry Pi or Arduino, deploy it in a field, I can actually monitor the elephant movement, do their study, and further ecology on their communication and that kind of stuff. Human-wildlife conflict. This is another system where we try to protect humans and the animals as well, and the crops. It's a complex system I'm started working on the ground. It's a sensor-based system. So as I mentioned, the sound sensor, the video sensors, audio sensors, I'll put it in the field, connect it with IoT, Internet of the Things kind of a communication protocol, built-in AI into each of the sensors, and it works to alert the villagers, alert the people, forest department, the poachers getting into a protected area, elephants getting into different landscapes. And the last one, after that, I'll take your questions and answer. This can be utilized into a very different scenarios. The AI is really cool, but it depends on how you are employed. Normally, we handle plenty of requests from forest department to capture strayed animal, which tiger or a leopard getting into urban area and getting a man-eater or eating a cattle's. Handling those animals are really scary. Trust me, you don't want to get a really irritated or a angry leopard or a tiger in next to your 50 meter. It's just dangerous. Been to a couple of those situations, and yeah, it's so we're developing a smart camera, so smart animal capture. So you set up. So normally, what traditionally people do, they put up a cage and a bait, a goat or some animal kill. The animal comes, get in it, it releases, and it captures. Now the animal is smarter. I've seen, experience some of the tigers and particularly leopards. They are so sneaky, they don't get into your trap. And it takes like months to capture and those rogue animals, and it creates a havoc in a community. So we are developing a similar kind of situation where there will be a remote controlled release net, and the whole identification of animal would be done through cameras, through AI. Just imagine, and there is no need for a human to go nearby. You are capturing by net, so animal will not get injured. You can stream your feed over your Wi-Fi or something in the car or at a closed further away distance. So yeah, this is really cool technology. Yes, you need a data. You need to have a thinking which is kind of out of the box, and it's a new science. And probably in terms of, as most of our students, this is the age where humans are going to. In the Anthropocene scenario, and particularly after the COVID scenario worldwide, we are day to day relying more on a technology for work to get the smarter things done. So the next is computer enabled stuff. Thanks. This is my email. If you want to drop an email, now I'll go through some of the questions. The Pranav, can such learning be useful in digital image processing and remote sensing? Yes, Pranav. As I mentioned in one of my example, we have used for GIS and remote sensing. If you have a very high resolution satellite imagery, like sub-meter or centimeter resolution, you can actually use the same model which I have used for, say, detecting camera trap images to identify features from the ground. And in fact, ArcGIS, IDAS also has enabled those feature tagging and those algorithms with that. But again, it's a classification problem. It either go through k-means or clusters or random forest or SVM kind of algorithms. Panchal says, can you model DEM and DET? Yes, you can't develop DEM or elevation and topography or a surface, but it helps us in detecting the noise in radar data to extract the elevation from the raw data. Shivansu, can we use linear algebra and partial different equation to solve algorithm used in a geodynamic model? Yes, there are. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, all these different classification or learning system are based on maths. So there are different system uses different algorithms, or and those algorithm actually uses these equations. Syed, can AI be useful for monitoring eco-sensitive CRZ for conservation, and how? Yes, it can be used for, say, rapid land use land cover. One of the problem I'm working right now is from the Lancet and Sentinel-1 imagery. I'm trying to, ideally, normally what's a workflow? You got a satellite imagery, you pre-process, you do a land use cover classification, then you check the change with the previous data, and then you predict what's SCZ happening or CRZ is doing. I'm building a system where it automates the whole system from getting a cloud-free imagery to level 2 processing to feature generation to validation to land use but it can be used for machine learning purpose as an algorithm. Neha, using GIS, how we can measure the behavior of tiger and destroying the livestock. Now here are two separate questions to understand. Behavior of tiger is more often a behavioral ecology. So yes, camera trap data and those AI models actually has gone into a step ahead. From camera, you don't only detect which animal it is, you can detect what it is doing. So one of the example, apart from tiger, so you can understand is, I'm using a device called accelerometer, which is basically detects the motion in 3 axes, how speedy, stop, up, down, left, right, into 3 dimensions. I'm feeding it to elephants in Northeast India. We got approval for 10 elephants. Now, what are we going to do about this? Any guess? We're going to use this accelerometer data to predict, to understand their behavior, when they are resting, when they are feeding, when they are running, and with the GPS location. So we know which land use or which behavior is attached with their motion and the correlation between them. So yes, it can be used to understand this, and GIS is the base of all this data into understanding. Shivansu, do you think AI can take more appropriate decision on ecology compared to human interpretation? This is a critical question. I would say yes, AI can take more appropriate decision because there are many patterns which we can't understand. Or if you're looking into a complex ecosystem, you have geomorphology, you have a vegetation science, you have a hydrology attached to it, you have a community science attached to it. So in short, you have a lot many parameter to deal with. It's just not plain vegetation or plain animal movement. It has a lot more attached to that. So yeah, you can mix that and try to understand what it is into a simple task, which human, again, it's a large chunk of data. Human can't do that. Dr. Nikki Jain, can Zigbee networking incorporated into it? We checked Zigbee, but again, the support for Zigbee is limited. We have used LoRaWAN, and there is one recent satellite which were launched from India, which will enable LoRaWAN communication through satellite uplink. So, in normal case scenario, we deal with Iridium and that kind of a satellite communication, but it's really expensive. And in jungle, you don't get any network coverage. Pranav, we have confusion metrics to evaluate remote sensing classification. What is the accurate assessment of AI models? This is very interesting question. Yes, there are different accuracy and in AI model systems. Most widely is TSS, true statistical skill, which is TPR, and true positive rate and true false rate. Overall model, you can get it from kappa. There is area under curve, receiver operating characteristic. So this is all statistical technique which can help in evaluating AI models. Arpana, how to get to know tiger count or other animals means whether it is the same tiger or different through camera track. Arpana, there are some animals which is able to identify to individual level. So say for an example, tiger through their strips marking, leopards, hyenas, zebras, giraffe. For that, we use a different technology called RCCN masking, where we have individual photographed it multiple times from different camera trap. We build model for not tiger, but for individual tiger and apply the same. I haven't got much success with it as of yet. But if you have opened your Facebook and you upload one picture, one party picture, and you have 20 of your friends in the frame, it can easily identify each of the face. So the same kind of a technology I'm trying to build to identify the individual animal. But it's in a pipeline. It's probably a year or two down the line. Nikki Jain, can their path and location be monitored for tracking purpose? Yes. We do it regularly. Traditionally we do called radio collaring with a GPS tag. We are developing low-cost LoRaWAN based radio collar also. It's in initial draft board stage. And just to mention, LoRaWAN is kind of a free technology. I mean, bandwidth is free, so you don't have to pay for the bandwidth. It's something like a Wi-Fi, but it works on a longer range. In Western Ghats, in Mudumalai National Park, I got a range of around 45 kilometers from one single device. So it handles like roughly 30-kilometer radius from the device. So if I build a sensor network and deploy this sensor, I can easily get a communication because this area does not have any cell phone tower or any kind of a communication. How you got to know tiger count or other animals, means whether same or different through camera trap? Yes, there are two techniques. One, as I mentioned, individual. When you're able to identify individuals, then you go to a modeling technique called capture recaptures. It's a totally different algorithm. It's a statistical technique. The another one where you are not able to identify the individual animals, say in a case of deer, where you are doing a prey density monitoring, you identify by what we call occupancy modeling. Mohammed, can we use the Ansible classifier on Google Earth Engine? How would it be better than AWS? Good question. Google Earth Engine has enabled a lot of problem with data crunching. Recently, very popular. In fact, way back when I used to work in Anand with FES, I have developed similar to Google Earth Engine kind of a processing engine. Both are same. I would say the problem with Google Earth Engine in a science domain is it's a black box. Means they say RF, but if you look at random forest algorithm, which RF they are using, Philips or Deduix implementation or what? That's normally not much widely open and that. So it's going to be same. There won't be much change. If you have a server or if you have a computing facility in house and you are dealing with a smaller chunk of data, you have a more finer control over your algorithm fine tuning when you're dealing with the local. Can we use a system for pre-alarming the disaster for prepared ourselves like earthquake? Yeah, earthquake modeling has been done, but it's not that successful. You can't do every modeling over nature. I mean, Mother Nature has its own drama to unfold. Bisa, how to use RS and GIS to find the rare, threatened, and endangered tree species from the forest? Interesting. Abisa, this whole is falling into a machine learning and what we call niche modeling or species distribution modeling. In fact, my PhD is on that, where I'm trying to find the distribution of all the birds of India and try to understand what's going to happen to them in a climate change scenario. It's going to shrink or they. These are the standard models. Again, there is ensemble options also there, but widely use a Maxen, a fine-tuned Maxen model outperforms other modeling techniques. It's easy to use, and people have found, in fact, in Brazil, I can share a paper offline later on, from 3 records from herbarium. 3 records from herbarium and some from the, what we call, gardens, botanical gardens. They were able to locate 3 population of an extinct tree. And as I mentioned earlier, in my birding, I have my own system where I can, predict where to find a bird in which season or which month. Raghivendra, already models are available in ISTAR and ArcGIS to do vegetation classification. So Raghivendra, those ISTAR and ArcGIS, those are not models to say, those are the techniques. So you have a K-means clustering in unsupervised classification, you have RF as a supervised. It's the same. It's nothing big. But when you are dealing with, say, 300 GB single image, it becomes tough. Okay, to create ML AI, which are the software used? Software you can, there is a, if you are looking into remote sensing and GIS domain, there is a very good tool called OTB, Orfeo Toolbox. R, I use R a lot. Python with TensorFlow, if you want to go on a programming side. Yeah, and last one, Keval. AI can know how any changes in behavior in a particular breed. I'm not sure of that, Keval. I mean, the behavioral science, I have not much worked on it, but there could be some applications. I think I covered all of the questions, and thanks. Over to Krunal.
Thank you very much, sir. Actually, I say thanks to the lockdown because sir is also stuck in a Anand city, and because of the lockdown, we are able to reach them, and we have a very informative session. It is a dual technology, computer and a wildlife. It is nicely combined by the sir, and we have a nice response from all the participants. So we are once again thankful to the Arpit sir for sharing his view and nice session on the artificial intelligence and environment. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
And
Thank
participants
you.
wants your email ID. So I hope sir is share your email ID. Sir is shared already email ID. You can ask the question personally on the email ID only.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Hence we close the session.
Yeah.
Participants are requested to please submit your feedbacks and your attendance. Link is open for next 15 minutes. And we are really sorry because of the large sending capacity of the email. We are over the limits of the sending emails per day. We are not reached to everyone. For more next sessions on the lockdown times, we are going to publish on the same channel. So please, you can select the channels and subscribe for that, and you will got the definitely information for those things. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Stay safe. Stay at home.